For the last panel of the day, we're going to shift our focus to workers of our industry. So what are the top platforms and programs for identifying, upskilling, and reskilling talent in the green economy? So to tell us all about it, I invite Daniel Yeoh, CEO and founder of OnePointFive. Come on, guys, give it up for him. Give it up. Last panel. We can do this. We can do this. David Etzwiler, CEO of Siemens Foundation. Anshuman Bapna, founder and CEO of Terra.do. Martin Baxter, Deputy Chief Executive at Institute of Sustainability and EP. And our wonderful moderator, Juliana Garaizar, venture partner and founding partner at Climatetech Global VC and EnergyTech Nexus.
Woo! Yay! Thank you. So welcome to the most important panel of the day. Thank you for sticking with us. We're going to talk about jobs, green jobs, how to get there, top platforms. And of course, we have amazing platforms here, programs, all of them impacted by geopolitics, AI, many things. And we're going to get started with some introductions. So Neil, why don't you introduce yourself and why you do it at 0.5?
Sure. My name is Neil Yeoh, and I'm the CEO and founder of OnePointFive. We're a climate advisory and academy. And in the workforce place, we have helped to train about 7,500 people in about 90 countries. And through our academy, which is an 8-week boot camp on Net Zero 101, in the last 24 months, we've trained 1,000 people in 50 countries. And as it relates to the clean energy sector, I myself am a robotics engineer, and I'm very passionate about this work. And we actually have a data partnership with LinkedIn, which I'll cover some of the green skills trends, particularly that we're seeing last year and into this year in their report, and also our report through the Climate Workforce Playbook. But based out of New York, in London, but a global citizen. I'm very passionate about seeing the workforce and the capacity and capabilities actually show up to make all this work happen.
Perfect. David, tell us about you and Siemens Foundation.
Yeah, happy to do that. David Etzwiler, I'm the CEO of the Siemens Foundation, so the U.S. Foundation for Siemens. We focus on workforce training, and we are particularly focused on electric vehicle charging and electrical jobs and electrical related jobs. So that's really where our focus is. We see a really nice synergy between the needs in the US and around the world for economic opportunity, for geopolitical security, and for climate, along with just providing opportunity to folks around the world, which is obviously a sticking point for a lot of geopolitical systems right now.
Thank you. Anshuman, tell us about Terra.do.
Terra.do, just do it. So I'm the founder of a company called Terra.do. I think we are one of the world's largest platform for learning and working in climate. Our goal is to get 100 million people working in climate. And we do that by running learning programs for professionals that range on everything from carbon capture to regenerative farming. We also run one of the largest climate job boards, job fairs. We're about 700 companies that hire from the platform. And we work directly with end users, learners who want to upskill themselves and work in climate. But we also work with large organizations like the World Bank and Amazon to help upskill their employees to do what they need to do and to bring climate to the job that they already do. I live in Palo Alto with 2 kids, and those 2 kids are a big reason to keep coming back to the work that we do, even as stuff around us changes a lot.
And Martin, tell us about IEMA.
So we are a professional body of people who work in environment and sustainability roles. So we have members in about 130 countries around the world. And they're leading sustainability programs in all sectors of the economy. So energy, utilities, finance, real estate, property, construction, infrastructure, but also in central government as well. And our job is to support them to develop the skills to be really effective in driving sustainability through all of their activities and operations and supply chains in the companies in which they work. But we also recognize that their effectiveness is predetermined by everybody else around them in the workplace. So we use a phrase, all jobs greener, to help to kind of mobilize the rest of the workforce. So we've been working on this for a long time. We're an organization, we had our 25th year anniversary relatively recently, but we are changing our name. I've got a much longer name on there behind me, so we'll become the Institute of Sustainability and Environmental Professionals. And it was 2009 I gave evidence before a parliamentary committee on green jobs and skills. So it's something we've been involved in, but we feel that the moment is now catching up with the rest of the world. So it's great to be here.
Perfect. So let's talk geopolitics and how it is impacting your world. Martin, you've been work with a lot of governments, ministers. You are at COP also. Tell us about how your job is changing because of all of the changes in geopolitics.
Well, I mean, the geopolitical situation is really interesting now. We've been doing some work actually speaking to business leaders, and maybe they're going to be a little bit more quiet on the things that they're doing. So whether this is about sustainability, driving climate action, also on EDI, and with diversity in the workplace and equality is absolutely critical. What we're seeing is that they say that this adds value to their organization. And when you do something that adds value to your organization, you don't tend to stop. So you find a way to continue to deliver that. And I think that's the really exciting thing for me, is to say, okay, well, and at COP29 in Baku, so I was with the Director General of the International Chamber of Commerce. So they hold the business voice into the COP negotiations. And they were very, very clear, that the net zero train has left the station and there will be bumps along the road. But business is on that train and it wasn't going to get off. And I think that that's what we're seeing at the moment around the world, is that it's the economy stupid. And if it's cheaper to deploy renewables at scale, if it's cheaper to use AI and other technologies to squeeze more energy out of our system in terms of usability without having to put more capacity onto the market, then that's what we will do. And we will call it something different, but fundamentally we know what we're driving for, and that's a cleaner, greener future. What has been interesting, so I've been to quite a lot of COPs, and we speak about skills, and that's been our bag, I guess. And really, over the last 3 COPs, COP27, particularly COP28 and 29, what we've seen is that this discussion around green jobs, the workforce, the capacity to do all the change that we need to deliver at pace and scale, has become a COP agenda. And I think that's been really heartening to see. The International Labour Organization, the Institute of Employers, the big kind of consulting firms like Deloitte are really kind of driving this. We've got LinkedIn, much bigger profile over the last couple of COPs. There was the first public debate around the role of green jobs and skills driving this agenda and being a conditionality in order to deliver the transition. So there's been loads and loads, and rightly say, on climate finance, but actually you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the people to do it, then it's not going to happen.
Who are you going to hire, right?
So that's how we see things developing.
So Anshuman, you've been around for a while. One of the first ones to create these programs, and you're global. How do you see geopolitics changing what you do?
Changing everything. I think I joke about this to my team that the true sign of our success would be when we get into political hot waters. And that's because climate is politics. So you have to win the politics to be able to make changes. I mean, the kind of scale of transitions we're talking about is just massive. And to then have them stick. So for us, we've seen changes in a couple of different ways, which is, first of all, just the hard economics and logic of the clean energy transition is bare for everyone to see. And that train has already left the station. And what's all that is happening is that the action is shifting from what might be happening in the US. Europe obviously is doing a lot, but it is Southeast Asia, it's South Asia, it's Africa, and Latin America. So I think that is happening in a big, big way. The other thing which we're also seeing geopolitically is that on our B2B side of our business, where we would have organizations come to us and ask us to upskill all their employees, a lot of the wheat from the chaff has been separated. So we have fewer number of organizations, but the reasons why they are there is because it makes ample business and strategic sense for them. And therefore, as a startup for us, it's actually much easier to engage. And frankly, it's actually more plausible to have true impact. So we've actually found this new environment more clarifying.
Okay.
And maybe the last thing I'd add is that we've always been focused on individual action. So for us, the reason why we built this company is because we believe that there are hundreds of millions of people out there who want to work on climate solutions. And now that the government seems to be taking their pedal off a little bit, more of those people are coming out of the woodwork and saying, well, then in that case, I have to step up.
Yeah. So, David, you are a US-based organization, and things have impacted you quite a lot. You were based on EV. You had a little bit of a
Say more about that.
a strategy meeting going on.
Yeah.
You had to rethink a lot of things. Can you tell us a little?
I'm hung up by Anshuman saying things have been clarified in many ways. We need to chat more. They've been really murky. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'll have a little more of a myopic approach to the question, because we're thinking about how do geopolitics apply to the U.S., what's going to happen. And I mean, certainly tactically, there are certain things that are happening. We have a partnership with the National League of Cities and the National Governors Association that had a national task force, which was really bridging federal, state, and local policy and thinking about what are the opportunities, what are the hurdles that can be removed, et cetera. But things have changed dramatically, right? And from a federal policy standpoint, the game is now purely local, state and local. And so that really drives new thinking. We're talking to those partners about how can we continue to be effective together, what makes sense. From the standpoint of electric vehicles, we sort of went all in. I mean, with the past administration and where industrial policy was going, EVs are not going away, but they're certainly going to slow down in terms of what dollars are out there for training, for investments and credits and whatnot. But that goes, fortunately, some of the checking with our partners over the last few months has really indicated to us that we're better off training not on specific EV work anyway, but in broadening out to the electrical fields. So even if you want more trained electric vehicle partners, you need to have more on-ramps and more off-ramps. So bottom line to what you're saying is it's changing every day, but we're drawing some conclusions sort of incrementally and waiting for things to shake out a little bit.
So in order to do that, are you rethinking your partnerships?
Yeah, for sure. We've just circled back and done sort of a sprint 4-week strategy review, checked in with our partners, how are we doing, what are we learning, what are the ways we need to really pivot dramatically or not so dramatically. So all of that is in play for sure.
Perfect. So Neil, you're working globally too with big global organizations like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
How are you seeing that from their perspective?
Yeah, I guess I can talk from the LinkedIn side and the data that we've received. And that there's one thing that you take away from this, I think it's accelerating embedded sustainability into the workforce, which I don't think is a bad thing. It was already happening. And what that means is that people without the climate or sustainability titled jobs are going to be the ones also doing the work. So what does this mean for a procurement manager who then maybe collects data for scope 3, a marketing manager, an engineer? And just to give you a statistic, with the rise of AI, LinkedIn has found that more than 60% of current roles with technology, information, and media actually have green skills in the job description. So we're already seeing basically all these job descriptions starting to have a green skill in them, which is something that contributes to a better future. And so in some senses, if you talk about economic mobility, getting a green skill, according to LinkedIn, increases your hireability by 54.6%. And in the US, it was 80%. I'd be curious about whether that changes. But the whole concept is right, is that there is an economic opportunities. Jobs hopefully doesn't become political. And if we lean in on that, how do we then build these skills such that people can create change? So specifically in the energy sector, I'll give you some statistics. There was a study with 1,900 universities that found that, in fact, 32% of universities globally are the only ones that actually have something that is renewable driven. There's 68% of universities that still have oil and gas 4-year degree programs. But if you then isolate that to North America, Europe, China, and India, it's kind of the other way. There's actually more renewable 4-year degrees than oil and gas. But there's still a lot of room for growth, right? And that's where you're seeing these specialist transition jobs in community colleges to professional bodies to alternate like boot camp training styles that Anshuman and myself do, is because at the end of the day, they actually are the ones that can be agile enough to create skills. We use AI and our ability to update material every 3 to 4 months. CSRD changes, I can change it in a week. And universities and academic institutions, they have a place to play, right? Economics, sciences, policies that slowly move. But when it comes to real hard skills, we actually need to transition the way that we actually make sure that the skills are built. And maybe one last thing is if you want to hop on and see our climate workforce playbook, you can go to opf.degree. And on our website, our climate workforce playbook actually takes a lot of LinkedIn's data. And the one thing that we found is that the majority of people hired into sustainability and climate roles, the skills that they're hired for are not the skills that they actually do on the job. So they're hired for like climate sciences knowledge, but what's important is supply chain management or data modeling. And so when you look at job descriptions, you also got to be careful that that's a lagging indicator to the actual skills that are needed. And I would actually argue, and we talked about this before, we call it blue collar or white collar creates division, but if a decision maker that's trying to hire a bunch of engineers or clean energy people doesn't actually understand what skills are needed for the job, that already is a broken system because it's not just the supply, it's the demand. And LinkedIn found that there's a 2x growth in the demand versus the supply of green talent, and that would mean that we need to double our workforce by 2050 to meet the net zero goals. It's not just upskilling people from community colleges, it's also upskilling office workers and decision makers on what do I actually need to move towards a clean energy future, which is not yet defined.
So how can AI work in that? And Anshuman, you have a...
No, I was going to just ask you for your experience on this same question about geopolitics, because you have this very unique privileged position where you're sitting in Houston in the belly of the beast.
Yes.
But you also are from here, and you have a strong familiarity with these ecosystems, and you work with startups.
Yes.
One of the very high leverage talent that comes into climate is startup founders.
Totally.
What are you seeing in your world? What has changed in the last
So
few years?
for us, it's fascinating, first of all, because I'm based in Houston. So there's been a clear growth in transition. One of the things that we've realized is that Houston was threatened in its own survival by energy transition, and there was a lot of fear. But then we started pivoting and seeing the opportunity, right? The job growth opportunity that you can be found in the energy transition. Also, there's a very good study by McKinsey where they see the correlation between the skills in oil and gas jobs and the skills that you need for energy transition. And 80% of the skills are totally transferable. So there's actually a lot of opportunity, and a lot of the reskilling for energy transition has been mainly about demystifying it. And that has been amazing. Most of the entrepreneurs in energy transition in Houston come from oil and gas. So that has been, many of them have learned about problems within their big corporate jobs. So if you check the makeup of the entrepreneurs in Houston, is not the typical ones you find in Silicon Valley or even in the East Coast that are young PhDs. In our case, they are more mature because they've had their careers in oil and gas. They have a lot of connections that are very helpful for them to sell, to get project finance, and also they have some capital available sometimes from their own careers. So it's been fascinating to see how that train has left, and many of them are total in it for the energy transition, and how now geopolitics are going to start playing into role. But most of the people that you see there are also global citizens, like I am. So since they work for many oil and gas companies, they've been all over the world, and they continue having those connections here. So I run a climate hub with 150 companies. Many of those who are in, like, for example, offshore wind are looking back at Europe now. Some of them are like, well, maybe we should move to Norway or even here, the Basque region, to try to figure out what the future holds. But definitely Very interesting. I like, Martin, you mentioned how you're moving from reskilling in terms of verticals, like we were doing for oil and gas, into energy transition, and more a functional reskilling. Like, for example, I was very intrigued by the design and the product design that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for us, this whole transition, so the energy transition is part of the net zero transition, it's part of a wider sustainability transition. And we've seen, if I go to maybe a company like Siemens, actually, but got some really, really good examples where sustainability has been really embedded in new product design. What you need is a lot of time and effort from the sustainability team in order to inform lifecycle assessments on all the material choices that are being made and how that's going to come to fruition, and then what does that mean about product integrity. So it's it's really labor intensive from the sustainability team. And yes, it got a really good outcome, but then the question is, how do you replicate that across every single product line that's being designed? And we don't want 30,000 sustainability pure professionals working in. What you have to then do is to say, okay, well, what are the tools that the design team needs so that every single design is done in a sustainable way? And it's the role of the sustainability team to then feed the data and the insight into tools that they can use. And that's how you start to mainstream this. So the way in which people work is going to change and evolve. Data AI is going to be super helpful to enable this to happen. We don't want people spending their lives diving into LCAs which take forever. We want the insight in order to make decisions that we can do super quick, and because that's the exciting bit, and that's what's really going to drive progress. So I think building up this, let's say we use All Jobs Greener as a very kind of descriptive way of just saying, look, everybody's going to have to be part of this, and then working that out from a functional perspective. And is it that the design process completely changes? Probably not. There'll be areas of knowledge and understanding that will change. There might be some behavioral things that change. There might be some skill sets that change. And then when we look in new areas like hydrogen, we probably say, well, actually, this sounds really, really new, except it's not as new because we've been dealing with this for quite a long time. It's about capacity. Yeah. And therefore, we just need lots and lots more people very, very quickly to kind of capitalize on the hydrogen aspects and green hydrogen and electrolysis and all. So that's, I think thinking about this in a more structured way for workforce development, both within corporations and then within sectors and then within communities, I think that's where we need to be.
Perfect. So how do you see the AI can be a great help also for job descriptions. You mentioned that it was a lagging indicator. Do you think AI can contribute to bridge that gap there? But it can also be a foe. There's a lot of fear of the AI disrupting the job market because some jobs are going to supposedly disappear. Yeah. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, there's two reports I'd actually recommend. Future of Jobs, the World Economic Forum just launched it, and it talked about it's a huge document, but you can also use AI to synthesize it. But the one thing I would actually mention on this, just to line up with this, and it will link to AI, is that you would theoretically think with the clean energy transition, we should focus on, let's train up more sector people in the clean energy space. But according to Martin and even for David and myself, it's actually, we need to look at it from a functional skill level. Yeah. It seems a bit counterintuitive, but I can finally announce that we have a partnership with Cisco Foundation with their Net Academy, and in 2 days' time, we are launching a completely free course on Introduction to Greenhouse Gas Accounting for IT. Wow. And it's for two reasons. One, skills should be accessible, which Anshuman and I agree with. Two, we need to make these skills and green skills more mainstream and not just be in an echo chamber of the same people. But third of all, it's actually playing on the route of functional skills. Like I talked to you, like tech will have a green skill in it. What is that? IT professionals have a huge influence on not only Scope 3 data collection that's needed for the huge amounts of value chain emissions that we have, but second of all, the Scope 2 emissions that are going to skyrocket because of AI, their jobs are actually going to have more of an influence and play to make sure that organizations, we talked to the head of sustainability from Meta, who is very worried about the fact that Scope 2 emissions are going to skyrocket with AI, and to meet their net zero goals, they're going to need even more skills. So I would almost say that maybe the AI growth, yes, it's creating a lot of energy usage now, and hopefully that reduces over more efficient models, just like we saw with
DeepSeek.
Yeah, DeepSeek. But additionally, maybe this could be, in a hidden way, accelerating the skills that are needed across the workforce for the things that are related to AI with energy usage, which is the clean energy space.
Very interesting. David?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, and thanks to Neil, because I think a lot of times we talk about AI on panels or speeches, and we are quick to go to the positive and leave all the risks and the other things that we need to pay attention to and manage. It's very real. So I'll use that as a little way to transition to some of the positive pieces that we see in AI. So when we look at our partners, I'm thinking, we talked a little bit about this before the panel today, the North Carolina Business Coalition for Education. This is a group that is housed in the mayor's office, has been there for, or at the governor's office, I should say, has been there for 40 years. And they are a partnership of business, of labor, of academia, and others. And they do a wonderful job of looking at the macro needs of North Carolina. What are the business needs? How are we going to solve those? Where are the populations who need jobs? And really linking things together and driving, in our case, pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. But that's one of, sort of 4 front-edge partners that we're backing over 3 years in the hopes that we'll bring forward results that can be scaled up. And even as fast as we push, that's an incremental scale-up in terms of how we do things. What I'm hopeful for in AI is that we'll be able to use data from folks like North Carolina to be able to map out what are the future needs, what are the energy needs, where are the institutions that can train, where are the folks that need jobs and can be skilled up, et cetera, so that we can be more proactive region by region in rolling these things out. Like I said, we're pushing as fast as we can, but to the extent we can use AI to really feed good data in and make good future results or future decisions, all the better.
So speaking of, data, but also your role as a philanthropy. We have these programs here working with big corporations, but also with some foundations. How do you see the role of philanthropy in the workforce efforts?
I mean, you're kind of tapping into kind of a religion or a passion, right, here for me in corporate philanthropy, and really figuring out, where is your best alignment? Where do you find the highest return on investment for society, given the assets that you have of the foundation, not just your endowment and your payouts, but what is your knowledge, what are your networks, what are the passions and skills of your networks who are out there. So, what we really try to drive for is to look at the intersection of 3 overlapping circles, right? What are the big issues of the day? For us, it's wealth inequality, income inequality, the needs of the economy and of the climate are sort of amongst that top circle for us. We look at the assets of the company. These are, we're a German parented company. Yeah. So those folks know apprenticeships, they know work-based learning, they know that the jobs that serve the company are those jobs that require more than a high school degree, less than a college degree. I could go on the assets there. And then the foundation has always been at this center of youth and what we used to call STEM. We really focus more on technical skills and technical knowledge. But it's that alignment for us that's been really helpful to say where are the capital markets going, where is there demand for jobs, because the last thing you want to do is train people up for jobs that are low paying, won't be here 3 years from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. It's a lot of the discipline that folks in this conference are all about, right? It's sort of driving highest return in its own way.
So Martin, let's talk about the need for a just energy transition, not only energy transition, right? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a really interesting one, Liz, because the net effect of the transition is generally seen as being positive for jobs, i.e. there are more people needed to be employed, particularly in the rollout of infrastructure. And so on the one hand, that's really good to kind of sell that. But we have many, many communities which are dependent on either directly or indirectly on fossil fuels. And fossil fuels, at the scale that we have them now, are not part of our future. And so working out how we do this transition in a way which drives the environmental outcomes that we're looking for, which is a big passion of mine, but also does it in a way which takes people with us, and we don't decimate communities in terms of businesses closing because they're not part of the future, and we don't have the workforce skill, or we don't have the replacements in terms of the work that people are going to do in the places where they are ready to go. So I think, and you know, I had the misfortune of having to go kind of do live radio broadcasts on the day to kind of comment on the closure of a big steel plant in the UK, which will decimate, you know, a big part of one of the towns. And yet we all know that that was going to close.
Yeah.
It was not going to have this. It was known for a number of years. And yet, at a community level, they didn't have the organizational, I don't know, bandwidth, capability, insight, drive, passion, money, all of those things to actually kind of get ahead of the curve and really kind of do that. So I think there's a big role for government, business, you know, community groups to actually kind of work through this to say, okay, well, how do we bring the jobs of the future to the places that are going to need them? Because without that, we'll either really harm people and livelihoods, and that creates problems in society over a longer term. But also, they might be really reluctant, you know, the places then to be part of something that we all think is really exciting and is the future. And we need to get on with it really, really quickly. So we need to kind of show people a positive pathway and actually tangibly deliver that in a way which kind of takes people.
So I know we're at time. Let's finish with you, Anshuman, a call to action. And I know that Neil has put together a set of resources that we're going to share with all of you. But what would you see as a call to action for the future?
I think of so we are Terra.do and not Terra.edu, because our goal was that learning is a means to that action, and therefore what matters is action. But there is a hierarchy of action, and we're all capable of that. And a lot of us are actually traversing that entire hierarchy. The bottom of that hierarchy is us, our families, our local communities that we live in, and bringing this knowledge, not just to our dinner table conversation, but also to our community town halls. That's what. I think at the next level is the professional capacity, which is kind of what Neil and I truly believe in, which is that, and Martin, to your point as well, which is every job has a green component to it. Yeah. And you need 3% of the people in a large organization to truly believe that, to truly switch the entire organization into thinking like that strategically. So therefore, play your role in that. And then the third is at the political level, which is that this is the biggest transition humanity has ever attempted. Right? This is bigger than the Industrial Revolution, bigger than the Digital Revolution. It can't be easy. It won't be easy. And it's probably a generational work that we're all setting ourselves up to. So therefore, think in terms of decades, in terms of your stamina of what you're trying to get done, and that requires political action, political change as well. So that's kind of my call to action.
That's a perfect ending to the panel. So thanks to all the panelists, and thanks to you for staying put with us. Okay, thank you.